unless there's a really good reason not to, say yes, because you don't know what's going to come from that. And this was completely out of my comfort zone. I didn't know if I could do this. But I also then thought, well, what if I could? What if I could do it? How amazing would that be? And then I also thought, if I can't do it, who cares? It's like, it's not big a deal.
Welcome to the Fluid Arts Podcast with your host, Kevin White, where we dive into the wonderful world of fluid arts, including acrylic pouring, alcohol ink, resin art, and more. In this podcast, we let talented artists share with us their techniques, inspirations, and tips for creating amazing fluid art. Whether you want to earn a living making art or improve your work, this is the podcast for you. So sit back and relax as we take you on a journey to learn more about this exciting and engaging art form.
Welcome to another episode of the Fluid Arts Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Jr., and today I have a special guest with us by the name of Chase McCloud. And today, what Chase is going to be doing is she'll be walking us through how she created this specific piece. And if you want to see the piece that we're talking about today, you'll be able to click into the show notes and check that out. All right. Also, she'll be able to tell you how she actually sold this to an apartment leasing office and got a lot of great stuff. But without further ado, Chase, welcome to the Fluid Arts Podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, I appreciate yourself. Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm in right outside DC in Northern Virginia.
Okay. Which city in Northern Virginia? I'm a little from there.
Herndon, Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Have you always lived in Herndon?
I have not. I grew up in Texas and was there until I was about 24. And then I went to graduate school in Delaware. And then I lived in New York City for about 8 years before I moved here.
Ooh, 8 years. Okay. And with the New York City exposure, was that something that you were able to, kind of link up with other artists and other creatives?
At the time when I was there, I was there doing a residency and postdoc I'm a psychologist. So I was there kind of for all my degree stuff. So I was in the art scene in as much as maybe I had a friend here or there but that was not at the time, that wasn't really my focus, but certainly took part in everything that New York has to offer in music and museums and Broadway and all of that. But at the time, my mind was very much focused on my degree and getting a job.
Gotcha. And you say your degree is in psychology?
Yeah, I'm a clinical psychologist.
Okay, nice. And so I'm sure a lot of focus, a lot of attention had to be, dedicated at that time. Yeah.
So it was, I was there during 9/11 and was part of the response right after 9/11. I worked at the trauma center at New York Presbyterian Hospital. And so New York is very much, I feel very, very connected to New York. Even though I didn't grow up there and I actually grew up across the country in Texas, I feel kind of like I'm a New Yorker in a strange way.
Yeah, well, definitely good for you, because that not everybody has their story.
Yeah.
Well, nice. So today, the photo that we're looking at, or the piece that we're talking about, right? Does it have a specific name?
To be honest with you, I'm still thinking of a name. But I got to come up with it quick because it's going to be hung in the leasing office probably in the next few weeks. So I have to come up with a name, but right now I don't know.
Okay. And what is the dimensions on this piece right here?
It is 60 inches by 60 inches.
Okay. And is that something that the apartment leasing office that they requested, or you just kind of
chose?
Okay.
Yeah. So I was contacted by actually the interior designer who is part of the company that is building this apartment complex. So the leasing office was something she was in charge of decorating. And so she had a very specific request. So
Oh,
the dimensions, the colors, all of that came from her.
okay. That's nice. And how did she hear about your work?
Well, it was very strange. But she's in Texas, which has nothing to do with me being from Texas. That was a complete coincidence. And apparently they are building several apartment complexes in Herndon. And she, like I said, was in charge of decorating, designing everything, all the entire interior design of this lobby, and said that she was looking for a local artist to do a piece for kind of the entryway into the leasing office. So she went on Instagram, I think it was Instagram, and she found my stuff because, and this is when it gets kind of strange, but I had tagged, when you do tags on Instagram, I had tagged creates art Herndon tag, just because, and it's basically local Herndon artists associated with our art space, which is a artist kind of community here. Yeah. So that's where she saw my work, was in that the Herndon Arts kind of Instagram page.
Wow.
And so that's how she saw my stuff. And then she, went to my Instagram, then she found my Etsy, and then that's how she contacted me. So it was very strange. It's a very strange set of events.
Yeah, and I mean, it does really sound strange, but however, for the main part, social media seems to create that strangeness. As long as you have it, those strange things tend to happen, it seems like.
I 100% agree. And I think it's kind of like, if you build it, they will come. If you put yourself out there, you never know what's going to happen. And I think that was just what this was.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome for the listeners as well. So if you're creating art and you're doing all this great stuff and great work, but you're kind of hesitant on if you want to create a social media platform just because you don't know, I think this is a great example of kind of why, because you said that this is not something at the moment that you work on full time, right?
No, I started this art adventure in seriousness in March, in when COVID hit. So, me and millions of others stuck at home, and I have 2 teenagers, and they didn't want to have me. They didn't want me in their business all day long. So I had to find something to do, and I just have a certain personality. I sort of do things intensely, and I decided to start painting. I've done some painting and crafts and things my whole life, so it wasn't completely out of the blue, but to have that kind of time all day to devote to something I've never had that kind of time in my whole life. And so I thought, this is it. If you want to do it, you'll never get an opportunity like this. So that was my mindset. And so, I kind of went full all in, and social media was a part of it because it's the only way to communicate at the time. I wasn't getting together with anybody. So social media was it. It was the only way to tell people what I was doing, show people what I was doing. It was the only way to connect at the time. So I formed an Instagram page and joined Facebook groups and all of that. It was really important.
Yes, well, that's great. That is amazing. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who had a similar mindset during this whole COVID situation, and that is amazing. I'm just in awe with how you got to where you're at right now with the Facebook acrylic pouring community. Is that kind of how you found us?
That was, I joined that Facebook. I think it was the very first thing I did. I'll be honest with you, other than look up what is acrylic pouring. Like, I looked up acrylic pouring. I watched some videos, and then I can't remember how, but found you guys on Facebook and joined. I think it was the very first thing I joined. And it was what launched me, because you could ask questions, you could see what other people were doing, you could figure out who's who and what techniques, what the names say. When you first start, you don't know anything. And I felt like it was a forum where I could very safely say, what's a swipe, or what's are you using a hair dryer? All sort of what felt like really basic questions. It was where I started, I would say. It's where I got all my first information.
Okay. And then when you started, so this one, being that it's fairly large, the 60 by 60,
Yeah.
is where did you start off with a little smaller piece, or?
Yeah, so that was a leap. That was a leap of faith. So when she contacted me, I first of all had to think to myself, do I say yes to this, knowing that I'm kind of new at this? And so I decided to go for it, because why not? And when I talked to her, I was very honest and very clear that I had never worked with the canvas that big ever. And she said the magic words, "I know you can do it. I know you can do it." I was like, okay, that's all I need to hear. And so the jump to that size was enormous. And in fact, I think the biggest canvas I had ever painted on before that was 16 by 20. So this was a big leap. So what I did was I bought increasingly bigger canvases and just moved from smaller to bigger, because I needed to learn, how much paint am I mixing here? How much paint do these canvases really require? How does it move when it's that big, and the weight of the paint is different on a bigger canvas? It's going to move differently. So I just taught myself that way. So I took the next biggest size, and I took what she wanted. She had given me kind of an image of what she wanted. And I tried to do that on these increasingly bigger canvases to just see if I could do it and what it would look like. So that's how I did it. And I just moved up. But I have to say, I think I got to, I can't remember the biggest, maybe 36 by 24. And then I just jumped to the 60-60. It's just a huge jump. And so what I did was, knowing that there's no way on the first try am I going to get this. I have to learn. My first try was my learning, that was my mental attitude. So I bought 3 canvases thinking I have 3 tries to do this. So the first one taught me painfully how much paint you need, which is just so much more than you think you need. How to mix that kind, the buckets you need for that amount of paint, the amount of supplies you need. I just had to learn it all by doing it. And I was actually pretty happy with the first one. I was surprised. A canvas that big is very physical. That was the other learning piece. The back bending and the core, you have to have this core strength to lean over a canvas that size and hold your buckets or your hair dryer, whatever you're using. You've got to have a lot of physical strength. My knees hurt, my back hurt. It was a pretty amazing experience. Okay.
And you had mentioned with a lot of paint, how much paint would you say on?
Oh God. All told. So the painting, if you look at it, it's a lot of blue and a lot of white. And so those were my 2 main colors, a lot of blue. So I probably had at least a gallon or more of the blue made up. No, in fact, it was more than a gallon. Wow. 5 quarts. Yeah, I had 5 quarts of the blue made up. I wanted to have some leftovers, because you have to be able to touch things up or whatever, and you don't want to try and match that color again. So I made more than I needed, but and then the white I probably used a gallon mixed.
Okay.
It
And
was
is
a,
that,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, it's just so much paint. It's hard to wrap your head around.
Okay. And you just go to like your local, art and craft store, or you order online, or how'd you get?
I ordered lots of stuff online. I just work with the blue and the white since it was such massive quantities. I used acrylic flow, artist loft flow paint as the primary
Mhm.
ingredient.
Yeah.
I just got tons of bottles of that, and then I just use Floetrol to mix it. And then to get the blue, I did add different higher grade paints to get the actual color that she needed. But yeah, I just ordered everything online, a lot of it.
Okay. And earlier you had touched on the consistency changes when you move up to the bigger canvases. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I had to make the paint a lot thinner than I would for a smaller canvas, because what I wanted to try and achieve with this was a very flowy, watery look. And so if the paint is too thick, it's not, this is how I learned with the very first one I did, it's not going to move. You're going to have, and you want your movement of your paint, unlike a smaller canvas, to be bigger. So you have, like, I had the hairdryer on high rather than low, because I'm blowing a large amount of paint over a large area, and it's got to be able to move. And so I made it much thinner than even when you do a Dutch pour on a smaller canvas, it's pretty thin because it's for the same reasons, but this was like really thin. And I learned what consistency worked by doing it and failing and then figuring it out.
Okay. And that's one thing that I pretty much hear on every interview that I do is the trial and error factor. I mean, we all have the stuff that we learn from the website, from our own, suggestions and other artists, but it really takes a little bit of that good old fashioned trial and error.
Yep, 100%. In fact, in that you have to, I build that into my expectations. I don't expect to get it. I expect to learn to get it. And so that's why I bought 3 canvases, because I had no expectation of, buying one canvas and then nailing it. There's just no way.
Right. And this was what attempt was this one that you submitted?
This was my third try. What you saw is my third attempt. So my first one I thought was great, to be honest with you. I loved it. It was my favorite.
Yeah.
Even though, I didn't expect, but I loved it. But she didn't, I had used a gold, a very rich gold, the 24 karat gold. She didn't want that in there because it was too primary yellowy color. And I was, oh, it's so pretty. So I tried to fix it. And when I tried to fix it, I just kind of ruined it. It was really bad. So I just started over. So it was my second canvas that worked out. So I have a blank canvas sitting in my garage.
Gotcha. Okay. So you bought 3. The first one you liked, and then the second one is the one that she liked.
She liked, right.
Okay,
And the first one that I really liked, I tried to fix and ruined it. So now it's in my garage too.
Okay. Yeah, I was just about to ask you, were you able to, do something with that?
I'm gonna pour over it.
Okay.
It's not good.
Okay. Well, I guess that is another good thing for listeners tuning in. If they decide to go big or go home, and they happen to mess it up, they can always just, scrape it or re-pour.
100%. That's one of the things I love about acrylic pouring. As long as you tape off the back really good. Another thing I learned early on, you can pour over it a couple of times even. And in fact, I would argue some of my best paintings are ones that I have poured over something else. And one of the reasons I think I really like them is because they're slightly thicker than the first pour. They have a layer of paint underneath, and there's a depth to those paintings that you don't have when it's it's the very first layer of paint. Anyway, you have to start to appreciate your mistakes.
Yeah. And as far as how long it took to get from, start of the first one to the finish of the second one, how long would you say that one took?
It was a span of 3 weeks. I wasn't working on it consistently for 3 weeks, but I did the first one. I let it dry, sent her a picture. She didn't like it so much. Then I waited to the weekend because I really needed help doing these. They're too big. You can't do that by yourself. So my husband helped with just the mechanics and the logistics of moving this canvas around. He figured out a way to hold the cord for the blow dryer, which made a huge difference because having that cord to hit your painting while you're trying to work is awful. So I tried to fix it, and then that was no good. And it was the next weekend where I said, okay, I'm sorry, honey, to tell you this, but we're starting all over. And then it took, I would say, a good 3 weeks for it to dry, maybe even 4 weeks for it to dry completely.
Okay. That is nice. So it seemed like he was kind of, he was happy to be involved with the whole art.
He calls it his painting.
Yeah, for all the work that I did.
Right. Exactly.
Well, nice. So she is going to, pick up soon. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. So when she had first commissioned me for this, she had said the turnaround. She said, we have 6 weeks. So on top of all this, she said, I want it by mid-September. And this was in August. And I thought, okay, so I got to get this now. So I had not just the pressure of learning how to do this, but I had to do it. I had to drop everything I was doing and devote all my resources to it. So it turns out, it's a building being built. And so, of course, things get delayed, which I was secretly, honestly, kind of counting on that it wouldn't be mid-September, but I was going to be ready even if it was. And the last time I heard from her, she said, oh, it'll be like, November 1st was when they're expecting to hang it, which I'm fine. It's all ready to go.
Nice. Well, that is truly a success story that I'm glad you were able and willing to, share that with us.
Absolutely. I love to talk about my art. My family's tired of hearing about it. So anybody who asks me questions, I'm excited to talk about it.
Okay. And it obviously from the way that you were answering some of my questions, you've learned a lot along the way. Is there just some general advice or some specific advice for the listeners that, if they wanted to create a specific piece of this size, like let's say the same situation happened where someone reached out to them via social media and wanted to, gave them a timeline, what advice would you give some of the listeners?
I think that overarching, my advice is always say yes to opportunity. And I know it sounds like, but really, unless there's a really good reason not to, say yes, because you don't know what's going to come from that. And this was completely out of my comfort zone. I didn't know if I could do this. But I also then thought, well, what if I could? What if I could do it? How amazing would that be? And then I also thought, if I can't do it, who cares? It's like, it's not big a deal. So say yes to opportunity that comes knocking, even if you feel like you're unqualified or unprepared. The second is expect to fail and plan for that. So, and know kind of what the costs and benefits are. So my attitude going into this was, this isn't about money. This isn't about getting paid or making money. This is about figuring out what I'm capable of. And I don't care if I even lose money in this venture, because I thought of it kind of like I do school. Like, this is an investment in my abilities. And so I was willing to buy the 3 canvases. I was willing to buy a ton of paint because I was thinking of it as an investment in this, knowing that I was going to waste a great deal of it learning. And that was okay. So that was my mindset. So that, I think those were really important pieces.
Yeah, that is perfect. And I think commitment is another thing that came to my head. You committed it to all the steps that were necessary, just as if you were committed to getting your PhD, right?
That's right. I think it's the same mindset. It's just a sort of a tenacity. You have to, there's some confidence there. Like, I think there was a part of me that felt like I might be able to do this. And so I felt it was worth taking the chance. But yeah, a commitment to seeing it through, and a commitment to not give up, even telling myself early on, you're going to fail and you're going to think at some point you can't do this. Don't let that stop you. Keep going, keep going, keep going. So that was my mindset.
I think that is awesome. Well, you, along the podcast, you had mentioned a couple social media channels where, if the listeners want to hear more of what you got going on and see some additional work, where should they go?
So I have the Instagram account page. I have a Facebook page, and the Etsy store. I have had people ask me to do videos, but I haven't made that jump yet.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all those links into the show notes, the Instagram, the Facebook, and the Etsy page. And yeah, Chase, I appreciate you stopping by.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was fun. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. And, I'd love to hear more of some of your art creations.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
As always, viewers, if you enjoyed this podcast, then comment below. That helps us out with the podcast rankings. And also share this episode with any of your art friends that you know who spend a lot of their time in this area of creation. Also, join our Facebook community, Acrylic Pouring Facebook, where we have more than 98,000 members who are, like she just said, like a forum, communing and sharing their greatest creations that they're working on. And that just might result in you being on another one of these episodes. So thank you for listening to this podcast, and see you on the next one.
If you enjoyed today's episode, then please like and share with your community. And please let us know if you have any suggestions for artists you'd like to hear on our show. This episode is sponsored by acrylicpouring.com. Acrylicpouring.com is the leading fluid arts website which provides fluid artists around the world the inspiration and tips they need. If you are new to fluid arts and want to get started now, then go to acrylicpouring.com to learn the 5 fundamentals of making beautiful acrylic pours for free. Also, join their Facebook community, where every day artists just like you are sharing their newest creations that just might end up on another one of these episodes.